So, Anna, have you ever read the Verizon data breach investigation report?
Do you want the honest answer or the...
Is there a fun answer?
So no, I have not read it. I've heard enough about it from Martin, but I have not read it in its entirely, no.
I honestly I haven't read it either. I just skimmed through it, and one of the things that always catches my eye is they have this really cool diagram in there that shows categories of different types of attacks, and over the course of so many years, and it ranks these based on how numerous are they compared to the other types of attacks. And for the year 2020, phishing attacks was number one.
That's really interesting. And I know when it comes to phishing attacks, I mean, most of them come either, a link in an email, web browsing, and as we all know, web browsers and email are some of the most utilized resources within a CVAT environment.
Yeah, and that's why it's important, for everyone, especially even the CVAT admins, to really understand this and what can be done. I mean, honestly, when I was a CVAT admin back in the day, I could care less about security. I was just more or less just trying to get published applications out to the users. But phishing attacks back then wasn't really that big of a deal, but it is now. And so that's what we want to take a look at is what we can do to try to mitigate that risk of a phishing attack, especially in a virtual app and desktop environment. And so that's why have one of our security experts joining us today, and that's Florin Lazurka. So welcome, Florin.
Hey guys, welcome. Thanks for the welcome. Yeah, so I've been at Citrix for coming up on 15 years, and a few of those years I've been working on security, whether it's from the networking side or from the CVAD side, and some of the newer functionalities that we're doing. So it's been very exciting seeing our progression and our evolution into moving just from secure remote access to providing a lot more of the features that we're going to talk about today.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Welcome, Florin.
So you mentioned phishing, and phishing is, as you stated correctly, it's growing, and it's been not only growing but getting a lot more complex as well. There's some very sneaky and targeted attacks, and you're absolutely right. Connecting or sending phishing attacks through email and through links that go to fake sites that are there either to grab your credentials or to actually download some malware and to get more information and more data from you is growing, and it's also, as I said, getting more complex. So this is where we kind of have a twofold or two-pronged approach with secure workspace access and secure internet access to protect browsing in general, and I'll cover how they differ and how they overlap in some small areas. Now, with secure workspace access, we have things such as the browser, the embedded browser. We have the functionality that we provide with watermarking and protecting our sanctioned apps or apps that are provided by IT, protecting them from data leakage and protecting from users copying and pasting and screenshotting and so forth. Where we're looking at secure internet access is the ability to extend functionality to those unauthorized or unsanctioned, pretty much those personal apps that you may connect to. Now, these can be from your personal remote machine that's sitting at your home. That's part of the domain, part of the corporately managed, for example, or it could be in your VDI session as well. So when you are connecting out to internet sites, being able to intercept that traffic and allow or disallow it.
Awesome. So, Florin, I know that when you're talking about published applications and even VDI desktops, right? These are provided by IT, these are sanctioned, and so you're able to lock them down and set some security policies around there. But as we all know, when it comes to VDI, you can access sometimes unsanctioned apps or through hyperlinks or browsers, etc. And so are we able to utilize secure internet access within VDI as well?
Yeah, I think that integration piece is really where it shines, right? So these VDIs, these desktops are managed by IT, they're imaged by IT, so they're updated by IT. So being able to push an agent to the VDI and then be able to assign a user to a specific security group and then assign a policy to that security group gives IT the ability to allow and disallow traffic, internet traffic from the web browser to sites that are not the user not supposed to go to. They're not sanctioned sites, and then get that visibility into it as well. So it's a perfect integration for VDI for uh, basically intercepting that traffic and redirecting it or blocking it.
Really cool.
Yeah, let me go in and kind of speak a little bit more about how these features kind of stack on top of each other. There's a whole stack, including the SD-WAN integration, that we'll not cover today because it takes more time, but it's really cool because it goes end to end. But let's just cover the SIA, or Secure Internet Access and Secure Workspace Access. I mentioned earlier being able to do the on Secure Workspace Access, being able to do the remote browser isolation and having that zero trust network access where you're just providing access to specific applications. You're not providing access to the whole network. But then also with secure internet access, being able to have that web gateway, a firewall, have a true CASB, a cloud access security broker, with malware protection and DLP and in a kind of a sandbox mode. So you're actually taking traffic from an endpoint, redirecting it to a cloud service, and that cloud service runs security checks on it and then sends it on its way. So think of it as almost like a man in the middle where it takes that traffic, opens it up and sees where it's going and then says yes or no. And for specific reasons, right? And we have a lot of use cases where this remote work is very common, and it's going to be common for a while, and it's going to be permanent for a lot of organizations. So these new remote workers with new sites, being able to protect against zero-day and insider attacks, and some of these attacks that are signatureless and maybe they're done in memory and so forth. Being able to inspect all the traffic that goes from the endpoint to the web, and then looking. And this is where it really comes in, is having that visibility and to provide visibility into that traffic and alerts and so forth. So there's a whole list of capabilities. The ones that focus mostly on the phishing and being able to protect against those kind of attacks, amongst the others, are the capabilities of looking at web filtering, right? So being able to inspect the content and being able to look at the browser and the OS and being able to look at the file and the domain extensions, right? So a lot of phishing attacks may not just be a link to a website. It might actually be a file that's embedded that has malware in it, right? But the attack itself is a trick on your confidence and on your trust to think that you're able to download this PDF file that may be called an invoice or something, and then you download it, open it, and it produces some sort of malware on your system.
Well, that's one of the things that a lot of security teams do, is try to train the users on identifying that this is not a legitimate email or this is not a legitimate link. But training only goes so far, because if it's all it takes is one user to mess up, and you might have infected your network.
I'll give you an example that I've heard out in the wild. There was a C-level in a security company that was, he personally chose not to be on social media, right? So it's more difficult to track somebody down and do this kind of open source intelligence on a person when they're not on social media. But one of his family members was, and the researchers, or the bad guys, the bad actors, were able to link them together and find out that his daughter had a medical issue where she had like a cast or something. So they formalized, they made this email very targeted to say, hey, this is your daughter's records in the email. And of course, there's a level of trust there when you have something that sounds familiar. and he opened it, right? And it's that kind of level of attacks are occurring. It's more of a kind of a spear phishing attack, where it's very targeted, but it's common as well when it's big money. All right, so I mentioned earlier that there's one of the options is this Cloud Connector version, and this is that's the name of the software agent that runs on the end user device. So it's installed. It can be pushed through update tools, very common update tools. There's GPO functionality. There's authentication with AD and so forth. So it knows, say, a user across multiple devices. So we're able to have that kind of affinity between user and devices. That user gets associated with a specific policy group. So regardless on what device they're on, they could potentially have the same policy levels. There is, I mentioned before, integration with the SD-WAN, and that is for kind of a direct access mode. So regardless whether you are in an office, whether you are remote, or whether you are in a situation where you may have bad connection, you can connect through an SD-WAN and still get to the secure internet access POPs that are available, which I'm not going to talk about now, but there's over 100 different points of presence for this service. Let's just kind of look through the interface real quick, and then I'll have a demo that goes through a little bit about the user experience. So in this case, we have in Citrix Cloud, we have the tile for secure net access. We have web security. We have the ability to look into reporting and analytics, and then some data loss prevention as well. So all of these have their own separate screen where we have configuration for, in this case, we're looking at web security, being able to go through different content categories and allowing or disallowing, or just not really doing anything with it. So you'll see here the different capabilities that are available. Same thing when we look at being able to do the section for DLP. We're able to go in and protect against data loss. And this may sound a little familiar if you knew some of the functionality with the web application firewall, where we have the ability to kind of just block certain kind of data from being presented or from being brought back. So if it fits a certain type of format, whether it's phone numbers, whether it's email addresses, it stops being presented. And of course, without having the visibility into it, that wouldn't be very helpful. But this is where you see the number of infections, command center callbacks, command and control callbacks, whether there's malware blocks and so forth. So there's a fully reporting and analytics panel that gives you visual access into what's going on with the environment.
And that's great that we're seeing it from the administrator perspective, but can we also see, like, what does a user see if they happen to go into one of these sites?
Yeah, sure. So let me just play this demo video right now. And in this situation, we've had the user download and install the connector. So it's installed on the machine, and you'll see that on the admin side, we have a user 2 show up, and also user 1. And well, we can pull information from them, what's on their device. It can do things like revoking a device as well. And then we can see here, what security group they're part in, what things are pulled from the registry, what's part of their settings are. So it does a good inventory of each device that gets pulled. So we're going to go ahead and after this, we're going to go in as the user, and we're going to go ahead and browse to a gambling site, right? So this user is part of security group 9, which is part of the demo group. And once you go to 777 or 777.com, it's allowed, right? So this is one site, and it would fit in the category um, of gambling. We're going to go ahead and into this demo group 9, we're going to go change the security settings for this user or this group and go back to gambling and disallow it. So we go ahead and save it. And then as the same user from the same browser, we're going to go to a different gambling site. So, not to be the same one, but we got poker.com, casino.com. So this is what the user sees. As soon as the policy is enabled, it's pushed down through the agent to all the people, all the users within that security group.
That's good. Is in in this example, it was just more or less a user typing in the URL because they're trying to get to the site. But I mean, if you think about, you get an email or there's a hyperlink inside of like a Word document or a PowerPoint that says something, it might say something important that you're just like, oh, I need this, and you click on it. You could be tricked into going to these sites. This is protecting you from doing that accidentally.
Absolutely. So these are some of these sites they masquerade as legit sites, and they'll be blocked because there's the system builds a database of bad sites basically, not to go to. Let me go and switch back real quick to the earlier question we had around VDI integration, right? So I mentioned before that this is a great integration for extending security policies to the VDI around browsing, and it's quite simple. So Dan, if you go back to becoming an admin, I'll give you the 4 steps here, right? So there's either manually or through GPO, you can install the connector, and you configure the agent in the VDA image, right? So you just have it baked in, pointing to your environment. On the console, you saw what we just did. We enabled allow and deny policies for certain groups and certain websites. So for security group 9, the demo group, we disabled gambling. And then the agent is going to be present in all of the new VMs, and it's going to inspect all the outbound traffic from that VDI, and it's going to go through. And then if it hits one of those policies, it's going to block the traffic, as you saw. It'll go to the sorry page, the maintenance page, basically. And if it doesn't, then it goes where it belongs.
This is great, Florin, and we really appreciate you coming and, talking to us about this. Like Dan said, I think security now more than ever needs to be top of mind. And a lot of times the user might not be malicious and you may train them all you want, but, the attacks are getting better and better. So I'm glad that we're showing that there's more ways that your environment can be protected. So thanks, Florin, for being here.
You're very welcome. Thank you.